Congratulations, you're under contract. Now what? I'm going to be going over my under contract checklist. These are the things I look for once I'm under contract. I make sure I get through this checklist done. It is commercial specific, but a lot of these can apply for single family, multifamily assets, and then some of them just don't apply for the other asset classes. But once I'm under contract and I have all of these checked off, I can feel comfortable. I have a good idea on what I'm purchasing. I'll constantly be updating this list over here, adding, deleting stuff, but I'm going to show you each one of these items for properties that I've already purchased, just to show you an idea of what they look like and how important each one is. The first one's a property condition report. This is like your Bible for the property, especially if it's a value add property. So an inspection literally goes and looks at every single piece of the building. This is the roof, this is the foundation, this is this. They literally go over every single part of the building and give you different summaries on what's going on in the photo. Now, this is like your Bible. This is how you're going to create your repair schedule, your value add schedule, or just so you know once you close what the situation of the property is going to look like. Now, from this report, a lot of the next ones are going to come, primarily the PIP or the property improvement plan, which we'll discuss later. This property report, property inspection has to be done with the minute you're under contract. You got to schedule it because you usually, for all of these, really, you have a due diligence period in which you can typically you can negotiate a due diligence period where you can really do your homework, figure out what's going on with the property. And I really take that time to do the inspection report and all these other due diligence items. All of this should be checked by the time the due diligence period ends. So pretty much saying my earnest money deposit is now hard, it's non-refundable, and I'm planning on closing with the property, barring any major thing coming up. So the first one, property condition report. Next, you have the environmental. This is primarily for commercial assets, but what they do is someone goes out there and looks at the previous uses of the property and essentially is letting you know, is there any soil contamination or any environmental issues you may run into down the road. This is crucial because if you have a lender, if you're getting a loan on the property, the bank will require this, and they'll let you know if there's going to be any issues, any potential waste or anything under the property that could be a major expense down the road. So after that, we have check the property tax. This one's crucial. You want to go to the county's website and pull the property tax. So for this building, it's about 8,000. Now you got to remember, this is what the current owner is paying. So if you're under contract, when you purchase the property, it could get reappraised. So every single county has different ways of calculating taxes. So you're going to have to deep dive that specific county. I'm not going to dive deep into each one of these because they could each have their own video, but this is just kind of a checklist. So for property taxes, you're going to see based on the new purchase price that you're buying the building for, what the new property taxes is going to be. Next, you have financing quotes. This is important if you're getting a loan for the property. Here's a financing quote I got on a property. This one was small loan for a small retail center, 8%, 1% origination, 5-year term, 20-year amortization. So this really gives me an idea on, I can plug it into my calculator and I can figure out what my monthly payment's going to be, what's my cash flow going to be. This is critical. So you know how much you're actually going to make each month from property. So you want to make sure you have financing quotes. You start contacting lenders the minute you're under contract to get quotes. Yeah, and then the terms are basically over how long are you paying it back? This is the terms right here. What's the loan amount? What's the interest rate? How long do you have to pay it back? What's the fees, etc. Next, we have the property improvement plan, or the PIP. Property improvement plan is a document that essentially says what your plan is to add value to the property. So here's a property improvement plan for a retail center I purchased in Florida. And essentially phase one is the exterior improvements, what we plan on doing. For this property, we actually had to submit it to the city because the city wanted to see our improvement plan. So part of the purchase was the city was requiring a property improvement plan from the buyer. So we had the exterior upgrades and then the interior improvements, security, and then leasing. So it just kind of goes through. Usually there's a dollar amount added to these, but I erased them because this is the copy I'm sending to the city. But typically you have roof, so you're getting quotes at the same time, which is something I definitely want to add. Property improvement plan, and then quotes, property improvement quotes. You see, I'm always adding and decreasing from this list. Actually gonna have a link to this list in the description, so if you want to hop in and see the latest version of it, you can see. You won't be able to edit, but you'll be able to see what the most up to date one I'm using. So during this time, you're creating the property improvement plan, which is really just a document that says, okay, this is the condition of the building. These are the things I plan on doing, roof, parking, whatever. And then you have dollar amounts. You got contractors to go out there and give you quotes. I usually like to get 3 or 4 quotes for each item or 3 or 4 contractors to give you quotes on everything, and then you can run the numbers from there. So that's property improvement plan. The CapEx schedule is like, for example, if the roof is bad or if the roof is getting there, has 5, 7 years left, you want to make sure that you have a schedule of CapEx when you're going to need to do some of these major repairs and then start saving capital for it. You're going to change the roof, water heaters, ACs, and you know their life is coming to an end, then you can start preparing for it. Now, your um, your property inspection report is your Bible for your PIP. So you're going to be relying very heavily on the condition report, your inspection, when you are creating the PIP. So you use the property condition report and then have that on one screen. On the other screen, just start creating, okay, this needs to get done right after closing. This needs to get done, and this needs to get done. And that's essentially your PIP. And then after that, tenant interviews. Tenant interviews is when you get on the phone with the tenants and figure out what their plans are. Now, this is less common in multifamily and more common in retail and industrial because these tend to be, longer leases. You want to figure out if the tenants are leaving or staying. I recommend doing the same with smaller multifamily if it's 2, 3, 4 units. Ask for contact details for the tenants and just give them a call. Hey, do you plan on staying? Is there anything any repairs you'd like in the building? Any how would you recommend I improve the building as the new owner? Build that relationship with them. It's a good chance to get to know them. Sometimes I like to introduce myself as I'm going to be the new property manager. You don't necessarily say I'll be the new owner, or you could say I'll be the new property manager. And I just wanted to get some more information. If you have a property management company, you can have them reach out. But for that one, I actually have an AI summary of a call I had. So Matthew Massoud is buying a building occupied by CSM Potter House Church. There was a church that was a tenant in a retail center I was buying. One of the units was occupied by a church. So they said they love the location and plan on staying. And then I just wanted to ensure they'll stay after I take over because they were on a month-to-month lease. I was trying to make sure I wasn't, going to buy it, and then immediately they disappeared. So I actually, I asked when they have services because I was going to be in the area and I wanted to attend one of their services. So I was asking when they had services. And had a great conversation with them. And then after we closed property management, we do in-house, but I had a property manager reach out and then, hey, this is how you pay rent. This is how you submit maintenance requests and really build that relationship. But I like to talk to them while we're in the due diligence period. So I know what's going to happen to my income as soon as I take over. I've had times in multifamily where I buy the building and half the tenants leave, or they're already pissed off at the old owner and they just kind of left as soon as the building, sold. I've had it where I bought a building and it turns out half the tenants aren't paying. And now the old owner didn't really disclose that, or maybe the new tenants thought they didn't have to pay anymore. Now there's a new owner. So it's good to, be able to know what you're walking into after closing. So I like to do the tenant interviews, get on the phone with the tenants, meet with them, especially if they're retail. I like to walk their businesses and buy something from there. So that is tenant interviews. Tenant estoppel. So a tenant estoppel is when a tenant fills out a form saying, "Where's tenant estoppel?" I had one pulled up. So this is a blank tenant estoppel. So a tenant estoppel is essentially saying, I've read this is what I believe is in the lease. So they're essentially clarifying because sometimes what is happening in reality is different from what's happening in the lease. So the lease will say the rent is 900, but then the landlord has been letting the tenant pay 600 for the past 3 or 4 months because the tenant's been struggling. You want to find that stuff out before you close. So this is essentially a tenant estoppel certificate, mostly common in retail and industrial, less common in multifamily. They essentially enter what they believe or they simply state what's on the lease. Has the lease been modified? You know, how much is your rent? How much is your triple net? What's your security deposit? You're clarifying all the details and making sure it matches what's on the lease. That's a tenant estoppel certificate. Next, you're going to want insurance quotes. You're going to want to start narrowing down on your expenses. You want to find out what's insurance quotes. There should also be utilities here. So you're trying to narrow down on your expenses. What is my insurance? What are my utilities? And then I pulled up an example. This is an insurance quote I got on a building. I think it had like a $3,280, $228 premium. So now I know how much I'm going to be paying in insurance for this specific property. And then same thing with utilities, you're going to want to narrow that in. Next, you're going to want to look over all the leases. So you're going to want to get copies of all the leases, your app lease agreements. You're going to want to read through them, and you're going to want to create something called a lease prospectus. So what that is just spreadsheet. Like this is how much the rent is. This is when the renewals are. This is how much each tenant is paying in rent. It's spreadsheet, so you can on one quick screen you can see what the prospectus is. Let me see if I have one. Prospect. There it is. This is a template. This is a product. I actually never ended up closing this. So this is like what unit it is, what's the use, what's the square footage, price per square foot, are there rent increases, is it a gross or net lease, what's their deposit, what triple nets are they paying? So in one screen very quickly I could say, okay, these are all gross leases with no increases other than one. They're all paying 12 bucks a square foot. This is the unit sizes. I can quickly on one screen see what's going on with the property. So that is copy of leases and lease perspective. And the last major thing is finalizing the underwriting. So I want to have complete underwriting done by the end of the due diligence period. So this is my in-depth underwriting spreadsheet where I'm filling everything out, putting in all the expenses after I've gotten real numbers. Now that I got quotes from contractors, now that I got insurance quotes, now that I know what the tax is going to be because I've looked it up, now that I know who's staying and who's leaving because I had my tenant interviews, lastly, I'm going to finalize my underwriting. Who do I think is going to stay? Who do I think is going to leave? What repairs do I need to do immediately? What repairs do I need to schedule out and make sure I have enough in reserves for? Now at this point, you have a full picture of the property. You can plug everything into your underwriting spreadsheet and you can really figure out whether or not this is a buy or a pass. You want to do this while you're still in your due diligence period. Typically, commercial has a 30-day due diligence period, then 30 days to close. That's all negotiated during the purchase and sale agreement. But at this point, you're able to plug in all your numbers and decide, am I buying this thing or am I walking away and moving on to the next one? And that's really my acquisition checklist. Once I clear all of these and I have all these details and I finalize the underwriting, at this point, I know, am I buying this property? How much am I going to make? What are the returns going to be? And I try to stick to that. And that underwriting kind of becomes my Bible or my guide sheet for post-closing. Once I'm closed, now I know, okay, this is what my renovation budget is. This is how much I'm going to lease the units out for, and this is how much it'll be worth when I'm done. And I have a checklist for property analysis when I'm still hunting, and I have a spreadsheet for after I close. But that was just kind of a deeper dive into the under contract checklist on the things I'm looking for. Each item I'm kind of putting together when I'm under contract on a property and kind of figuring out, is this something I buy? Is this something I pass on? How much am I going to make? What are the expected returns, etc. That was a brief overview of my under contract checklist. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I'll put a link to it in the description below. And if you guys have any questions, concerns, or curse words, feel free to let me know in the comments. All right. Thanks.